I kind of did a little experiment with it where I used AI to proofread. Not so much the developmental edit side of it. I mean, and it will give you all sorts of information on that. But I've sort of just been playing with it just to see how effective it is at that. And it's I will tell you guys, it is super effective at proofreading. And I normally use Pro Writing Aid, to fix all the grammar and stuff. But what the AI is doing that these other programs aren't doing is it's catching if the word's wrong. So, like, I mean, maybe I'm, bringing rice to China with this statement, but, if you have a sentence where all the words are correct, a basic grammar program isn't going to catch that. But if there's, or it won't catch the fact if you've repeated two words, like if you've gone like to the mountain, you you've typed it in twice. Um,
Quick
the
question
AI
for you.
AI is catching that, which is super helpful because I mean that's basically what you need a proofreader for is to catch those little weird things, that you
Absolutely.
miss. And I have to say I'm really impressed with using it that way. Um,
Let me ask you a
uh,
question, Heidi, before you keep
sure.
going, because I want to drill down into a couple of things. First off, do you use Grammarly?
I do not use Grammarly. I've been using just Pro Writing Aid.
All right. Um, I'm a big advocate for Grammarly, just even the free model. I think it'll catch a lot of that stuff that you're talking about. There are things that it doesn't catch, and it does get some things wrong, but that's why we do the proofreading as well. Second question: what models are you using to do your line edits?
The AI models.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to tell you because you're going to give me a lecture, but
No,
I've been
it's
using
it's fine.
Grok.
Yeah, I think Grok can handle that. I wouldn't ask it to do anything factual, but I think that in terms of line editing, it's probably fine.
It's been super helpful, and I know I'm feeding my info into it, and it'd be awesome if I could figure out, but it's sort of like technology wise, I'm a little like I kind of need you to just function without being difficult because my head is in so many other things. And I realize I've got that other model on there, but it's like I'm gonna have to sit and spend time with it, and it's kind of like, do I want to, that kind of thing. And so, I mean, I this novella's about. You're gonna love this, Michael. It's looks like it's around 19,000 words, so it's pretty easy for me to get through and edit on that. On the larger novels, it's gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna start frustrating me to be feeding that kind of stuff to an AI, and sort of going line by line with it. But maybe that's what I'm gonna do. I just have to break it into smaller pieces. Um, because my chapters are a little longer. I mean, the novellas. It's just a different. It's a whole different beast. It's much smaller. It's a lot easier to work with. You know. I so I mean I so that kind of thing is kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I just think we're doing this independently, and I don't have a slew of proofreaders available to me, so it's kind of nice to have that kind of feedback where I know that it pretty much catches everything. I mean, especially on that level. So I'm kind of very optimistic about using AI for proofreading. And I mean, I'll ask it to do a little copy editing, and obviously I'm very clear that I do not want you to change anything. I want you to show me suggestions for what you would change, that kind of thing. And sometimes it makes some interesting changes. Other times, it doesn't. It just depends. But like when I'm using something like Pro Writing Aid, so if let's say I have a section where I sort of slip where the sentences aren't, you can use sentence fragments, or the sentences don't have the object of the sentence or the subject of the sentence is implied. a strict grammar model is gonna say that sentence is wrong. You need to say the man, blah blah blah, instead of kind of having it be a little more poetic. I could pull up an example of this if you guys want me to, but I think y'all know kind of what I'm saying. But what's interesting is that, so say I'll say pro writing aid. These are the two things I'm using. Will not catch that. You'll just say this sentence is grammatically incorrect. But when I do it with the AI, it says, well, the sentence isn't right, but maybe this is what you're trying to do for this poetic reason. It's able to kind of comprehend that on some level. So to me, that's a useful sort of thing where it's like, is it, I can kind of drill down on right down to a sentence or something. Does this work in this context? So I mean, I know we're talking a lot about AI, but I'm in terms of just proofreading what I've done, I find it, you know, really helpful
Yeah.
in the situation I'm in where I don't have, a fleet of proofreaders available to me.
Well, I think that even in the preliminary stages before you go to beta readers and things like that, it's good just to clean up the copy in that way. Ricky, you're hanging out. Do you want to give us a progress report, maybe briefly, on what you're working on? It is the new year. Maybe there's some new projects, or maybe there's something you've had a breakthrough with, and we can hear about that before we jump into actually talking about how to get started with writing in general.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Michael. Hello, Michael. Hello, Heidi, and everyone else. Yeah, no, I've been writing Wargate 2, throwing down chapters. I'm closing in on 30K with that. I've also been tweaking the outline, my outline, going all the way through it. I'm about all the way designed all the way up to 60K, pretty much. Took a good look at poesy, like poetry. It's my intention to try to start a poetry open mic, regular open mic space, not long from now. I'm speaking to some poets who are qualified, who will hopefully be committing to that also. But more so, the other night I woke up at 2:30, seemingly for no reason, 2:30 in the morning, and I had to work on the writing book. Could not sleep. I knew I would not sleep if I didn't just get to it. So I got up like Ebenezer Scrooge, and was shuffling around, and then I sat at my writing station, and I had a brand new idea, seemingly from out of a dream, about how the content would go, like as far as content formatting, and I slopped it all together. I was up the whole day. I didn't take a nap or anything. And it worked out very well, actually. I have a much better format of that book now. I'm still gathering resources from the Four Winds because I have a lot of documents, specifically the novel design workshop data. I have to mill all of that and put that in the format, but it's already up to like 42K as far as words are concerned, a word count. But I'm a lot more confident about how it's sitting now. I feel like in another couple months, I may have something worth talking about. So yeah, thank you for asking, man. And it sounds like everybody's doing great. I'm thrilled about that, because I was a little nervous. I didn't know what was going to come of that book. I was starting to get a little bit like, oh, it's like this thing is too much. Maybe forget about it for a year. But then that happened, and I'm tickled pink, So
It's kind of wild when you have those I don't know, just premonitions, maybe something that wakes you up and drives you to have a breakthrough on some project. Um, Definitely take advantage of that when the moment strikes. I feel like that's just such a valuable incident that you got to harness it. As far as today goes, let's jump into getting started, right? Actually, beginning a new writing project. For me, the biggest thing is getting off of a blank page. I don't know how other folks feel about that. And also for the people hanging out, if you want to come up, grab a mic. Heidi or I will pull you up on stage. This is an open conversation. We're just hanging out. But as I was saying, the blank page aspect where you're looking at, just a sheet of paper or, a word processor with nothing on it, that is to me the not a good state to be in. You want to, at least I want to, get away from that as rapidly as possible, get anything onto that page so that I can begin to iterate and build out. And that's the thing too, is like, I don't care what it is. It could be screenshots, it could be pictures, if you're doing kind of like a mood board or something like that. I find that to be a great methodology. I don't do that, but I do find it to be a great methodology. I know that might sound conflicting, but it's how I feel. Things I like to do are grab up little words and phrases of things, put that stuff on there, and then kind of begin to think about it and add on to those things, or maybe begin to outline and kind of build out some of that stuff. But let's hear from Heidi. Let's hear from Ricky. What is the thing that takes you from zero to the first step of initiating a project?
Well, for me right now, I'm trying to look back because I've been in this world that I write about. I'll just refer to it as my songless world. I've been in there for years at this point. I'd say going on 5 years I've been working on this, 5, 6 years. So I'm trying to go back to, so the ideas just all sort of pop into that world. So are you specifically for the blank page? Usually for me, there's a lot happens in my head before I write anything down. So I guess the freshest thing I've written is the novella. That was an idea that was just percolating in the back of my head. God, for like maybe a year or two. I don't even know how long it's been in there. It just kept going, and it the bones of it was there. So, and then my experience is when I write, you start fleshing out the story, you start seeing what's happening. So there's that. But in terms of a blank page, I can specifically speak for that. One of the things that I do is I will write. I think of it a lot of times like if you're writing an essay or something, you've been given an essay prompt, you know. So here are all the points. So like if you have an essay, you say they've given you a rubric. I take all the points of the rubric and I write them down on the page, and I start writing answers to the questions that are the rubric. So I would say so I'm never looking at a blank page. I'm always looking at something that's there. So I don't think about, oh, I'm staring at a blank page, because I don't give myself the option to look at a blank page. Does that make sense? So I put the questions there. Even if it's just, I have this idea, I just randomly start writing things down so that I have those notes on the page. So I'm seeing them all the time, And that way, if I'm never looking at a blank page, I don't think about, oh, what am I going to write? I think about, how do I answer these questions that have come up in my head? I think about, if I have a scene, if there's some random scene that I have in my mind that is going to be part of the story, or that has just, I constantly am thinking about, I write that down. I mean, I just write down some stray dialogue, that kind of thing. And then piece it together, throw it out, depending on whether it's going to ultimately get used. But then I've got all this stuff written down, so I'm already in it. I don't give myself the option to see nothing. I make sure I'm always looking at something. Does that make sense? I don't know if that helps people, but that's kind of what I do. Because, you just, otherwise you just psych yourself out, psych yourself in.
Ricky, how about you?
All right. Well, you're in for it now. There's never a blank page. I don't have that. What I have is I have a bunch of outlining methods, and it really depends on what I'm designing. Even when it comes to poetry, there's an outline. I call it POTEC, where there's a line, how many words, how many lines, and is it a verse or is it the whole thing? So I'll put that down and I'll have a scheme. When it comes to novels, I mostly write 100K novels. That's what I've been throwing down for the last couple years. So the design comes where there's 100K that gets broken down into 10K plot points, which will turn into 5 chapters for each 10K, because my chapters are designed at 2K. All of that is to bake in a natural pacing structure so that things flow. Because I'm a big believer in the 3-act continuum, as I call it, which is 3-act at 100, 3-act at 10K, 3-act at 2K, 3-act within 2K. As far as prompts, I break up the 2,000-word chapters into 200-word bullet points, which I call word budgets. And I can design the entire texture of the pacing throughout the body of the work by so doing. Now, there are pantsers in the audience who are making fists right now. Their knuckles are white from inner tension. Because whenever I mention this to pantsers, that's the reaction I get. They think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like I should be thrown in a rubber sack and thrown out of a moving train or something. In this particular case, I'm very comfortable with it. It's not carved into granite, or whatever. So I can change it. And it does change. And I would get into that, but that's not really starting. That's subsequent. But yeah, that's how I start stuff. Like I said, I'm writing that book about it. It's looking better now, as I said. So I don't have those problems of a blank page. And if a blank page is a problem, then just dump. Like, even if it's a synopsis, like a 10-point synopsis of what you're doing, just dump an outline in and then the page ain't empty anymore. Problem solved, right? That's my take anyway. But I'm a goose, so who knows? Time will tell if this book will have any merit to it.
Well, I know Paula was in here for a minute, so I think she's probably getting some value out of it. At the very least, already, just in these developmental stages. I'm sure that as you shape it up and turn it into a more finished and polished version, then we can all take advantage of it.
Yeah, that would be great. That is obviously my intention. But who knows, right? I mean, I want it to be helpful, but right now it keeps me organized. And I'm about to go into an outline from years ago that I haven't looked at in years, because I have to redesign it. I don't like what's going on with what's there. And judging by what I can tell, it's not going to be that big a deal. The whole book is ready, but it's 2K, and I want it to be 1K. So I'm going to chop it in half. And it shouldn't be that hard. I'll let you know maybe next week how that works out.
Nice. We'll look for an update next week. When Heidi and I were planning today's workshop session, we had this idea about sourcing starter ideas from folks hanging out. And I think it's kind of cool. We don't necessarily do that. It is something that Gonzalo would do on his Tuesday night sessions. Now, I don't think that we're necessarily going to go quite as far as he would with that process. But at the same time, if you have an idea, right, even just a kernel of one, maybe write it down or put it into the comments. And then throughout the course of today, right, even the next hour and a half on this program, try and build it out and see where you get to with it, even within just this amount of time. And, we would be exercising what we're preaching here a little bit so that you go from 0 to maybe your first step or a couple of notes. And that way you end up with something at the end of this workshop. You don't have to necessarily take it all the way to a published piece, but maybe you get a poem out of it. Maybe you get a blog entry out of it. Maybe you just get some ideas out of your head and they develop into something else in the future. Hard telling, but give it a shot. I don't want to tell you what to do, but at the same time, we are writers. We are here to talk about writing. Heidi, do you have any idea about what you might jot down? Plans, concepts?
My head is very in this novella. I have another story in I'm trying to slow it down, to be perfectly honest, because I need to. I have a.
It doesn't have to be related to the Songless world either. It could be.
But that's my head's all in that world. You got to understand. I could talk about an idea. So let me think. Because you want me to throw something out that isn't in that world. I have another.
No, I'm not telling you to. I'm just saying you could.
It's complicated for me to do that because I'm literally in this novella. I was in it till about midnight last night. So
late hours.
Yeah, I get a little focused. So I don't know. Does someone else have a story? I've got all these ideas sort of focused in. Is the problem I have? It's going to get very complicated.
My thinking
I
here
can't focus. I'm blathering.
Yeah. My thinking is that, everybody would have their own idea, not that, we're going to workshop your idea. Really, it's a private practice, that we're engaging in here potentially. If anybody wants to, you're welcome to. Oh, Ness, you want to come up and hang out? Yeah. If you have, I don't know if that actually worked. I think I messed it up. There we go.
I think I got her.
Yeah. Yeah, Nis, you're on stage. Do you have an idea? Is that what you came up to talk about?
I do, and I do.
Perfect. Tell us about it.
So, because I have grandchildren, I always, have these thoughts and stories in my head. And so one of the stories that I have is about dogs. And the idea is that, of course, they came from the Star series and how they're meant to be guardians. And I'm sure there's books out there like that, but I have the story that I have is specific about our family dogs because my grandkids, they have 2 dogs, my other kids, they got 2 dogs, I have 3 dogs. And whenever they come over, everybody brings their dogs over, so it's like a huge dog family fest. But each of the dogs has their own personality. And so I started writing it. I just haven't gotten back to it yet. But when you watch animals and you watch just the dynamics and their body postures and, some of the looks that they give you and things like that, I know it's weird, or maybe I'm just had too much wine at the time I was thinking of it, but I have these dog conversations in my head of what the dogs are saying to each other, and what they're thinking. And anyway, so I thought it would be fun to create this book, take pictures, because I have the pictures of the dogs, with these looks that they're giving me in my phone, put together a picture book and put together a short story enough for my grandkids to just kind of flip through and they could relate to it because it's everybody's dogs, you know what I mean? So that's my idea.
So you've started this. You've got a little bit of something already.
I have a little bit. So what I do is I have the photographs and then I print it out. I have a printer that prints out photos, and then I kind of write, what they're thinking in the side. So I have this little like journal notebook, and I print it out and I tape it, and then I write what they're thinking. So,
I really like that process because it's very similar to what I do for some of the books I put out that are heavily pictorial, say the national park stuff, the Chicago 1893 material. All of that really started as captioning the images and then built out from there. I think it's a fantastic way to get started, really, and to build out your ideas. So here's my thinking on what you've got there is, have you reviewed that material and added additional notes, or have you taken what you've put down in that initial phase and digitized it? Because I find this kind of going back and forth between the physical and the digital, uh, seeing it all compiled digitally, then printing that out physically, and then making notes as I reread with pen, or maybe adding lines, fixing mistakes, building out sections, stuff like that, I find to be very organic and helpful and gets me to bulk up the piece.
I haven't done it yet. I still keep everything in one of these little journal books where, I print it out and tape it, and then I just write notes. And I haven't gone back to kind of piece it together. I print out about 5 pictures, and then I actually write the short little dialogue. Especially if there's 2 dogs in the picture, I write the dialogue for them, what they're talking about, to, just kind of build up what that image is saying. And so I haven't gone back, but I think that would be fun for me to do. I think to go back and see if I can follow the thread and kind of piece it together to really build a storyline, because I have bits of conversations, like I said, of these animals, including, and I've got sheep in there too. And I've got, chickens, the dog's talking to the chicken or whatever, so, or the kid, so it's just a really interesting kind of photo journal story that I'm trying to put together.
I like it. I think we have found a task for you to at least begin to develop that into the next phase of things between now and the February workshop, right? We're going to be looking for an update to hear about the developments and the digitization process, getting that in there. And here's the thing too, in regards to once you get it digital, I find that to be very helpful to objectify the work, in the sense that you can begin to get a large view of it, maybe think a little bit about layout, because you're working with images, you're working with editorial. I don't know what you're going to use to kind of capture all that material, whether you're doing it in a typical word processor program, or maybe you're using something like a web browser functionality. I like Dropbox, but Google has options as well. Or if you just do it, write in notes on like an iPhone, I use that as well. But I would say, getting things into that stage is going to help you take a step back from it to kind of see it as a whole, and then begin to tear it apart and build it back up again stronger into that next phase, to where you'll see like, these are the things that are missing, and these are my new ideas that I could not have even thought about until I had compiled everything.
So, what do you think? Because I love science fiction. That's one of the things that it's science fiction and adventure. So, I wanted to add this science fiction touch to it. How dogs came from outer space, and they were brought here as protected. What do you think about that kind of? Again, I'm thinking of a young person, a young children's book. Of just this kind of sci-fi fantasy world.
Yeah, I think it's viable. You know, I, it's impossible for any of us to predict how work will be adopted by readership. You know, do I think that it's good? Yeah. Do I think that it's bad? No. Really, it kind of comes down to I also haven't read it. You know, so I would say keep processing it, keep working on it, and to help in evaluating what you're doing, go look at stuff that you think is targeted towards the audience. Not only your grandkids, but maybe beyond your grandkids, that you feel is appropriate in terms of the content and the age group and the style that you want to emulate, and then maybe go ahead and take some notes. I actually did that kind of recently on a project that's in the hopper. When will it come out? I don't know. This year, maybe, probably not. We'll see. But I went and looked at about a dozen examples of what I'm trying to do with that, and wrote down notes for every single example that I was evaluating. And then, now I've got that in my notes for me to apply when I begin to do that work.
All right. Well, I will definitely. Now you've motivated me, so now I can try and piece it together. I use my MacBook, and I just have a word processor that I'm putting it in. But
Pages?
No, right now it's Journal. But what I will do is I will move it in. I'll start typing it out into my MacBook and stuff. So right now it's just handwritten with, like I said, in kind of just a hardback journal that I've printed out the images and written the dialogue and stuff, just handwritten it out.
Sure. So, sorry.
You've gotten me inspired now.
I'm glad.
Especially since I have a new grandbaby coming. So,
well, this is a good opportunity to produce something for them.
Right?
So just because you're using a MacBook, do you have an iPhone as well, or something else?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So this is kind of my first phase of digital buildup. Is what I do is I put it into notes, and I make sure that notes pages is on iCloud, because then it's on both my computer and my phone and other devices. And whenever an idea comes to me, say I'm out for a walk or I'm out hanging out with people, or whatever the case might be, or if I'm on the computer, I can put these new ideas or these edits right into notes, and it propagates to all my devices. I really like that for this beginning early phase of writing where you're carving out the ideas. You can also put pictures in there too.
Does Notes allow you to voice text?
Yeah, voice to text. You can do speech to text in Notes as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because after about 2.5 glasses of wine, I'm like having the conversation, and it'd be great if I could just let Notes record that conversation.
I mean, so in terms of recording the conversation, I'm not sure. You might have to use Voice Notes for that, which is another app, but it will do speech to text. So one, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whatever you feel is best. But what I then do, just to talk developmental process and technology a little bit, what I then do is, as I get really close to wrapping something up and I'm going to beta readers, that's when I go to an online platform like Dropbox. That way I can invite people to give them access to that piece, and then they're able to comment out along the way in line. Once that's finished, then I bring it into a word processor and really do the layout, because I feel like if you start with the word processor side of things, you might get a little bit hooked into some stuff, or there might be some styling that's in there that begins to cause problems, or you start thinking too much about layout too early on, and things will change along the way, particularly if you're dealing with pictorial content and editorial content. So something to think about.
So my other thought too, though, is I hear like writing an outline and things like this, but usually the images that I capture are just so spontaneous, and to me, it's each picture is its own little chapter section, if you would. And I think for even for like a smaller, for a young person's like 10 and under, that they wouldn't need a whole lot of background and context. It would just be that little scene, if you would. And so I kind of just letting it flow, but always keeping this kind of sci-fi thing in the back of my head of how they're, just the dogs know who they are and where they came from and where their ancestors came from, and they have a job to do, and then they're interacting with, their humans, so to speak. So, and of course, all we're on a farm, so the other animals and things like that. Anyway, so that's just I don't know. I think I'm gonna
Can
keep
I
going with it.
can I throw something out that I use? Can I plug Scrivener for a moment?
Sure.
Because the Scrivener software is what I use and to write in. Now, it doesn't have voice recording, but what it does do is you could make folders, and within those folders, I can just sort of have pages. So if I like what you're talking about, so like I will do this all the time because I kind of I'm kind of a between it's a pantser and plotter, right? I'm sort of a I don't know, a mix of that. So it usually starts out with pantsing for me, and then maybe I'll start putting a plot together afterwards. But what you're talking about, where you're just writing fragments and you're writing dialogue that you get from a photo and stuff, you can just have a page, and I will do that. I'll get like an idea. Maybe it's just like one sentence. I'm like, I got to keep this sentence because I'm gonna forget it. I can just have a page, pull it up, put it in a folder, and then just have that all in there, and then I can use them later. So I'm a big fan of Scrivener. It's actually made it possible for me to organize um, all these ideas that I can't do that in something like Word or Notes, because it's just one straight sheet of paper and every single document is separated. But in Scrivener, you can group them all together in folders and stuff. And I'm just a massive fan of that software. Um, it's enabled me to be able to do what I'm doing. So I would recommend you take a look at it. It's kind of nice because you don't buy it on a subscription. It's like a one-time purchase. So that's useful. But I really recommend it. If you're especially if you write like that, where you're just like, I have this idea, and then like Michael's saying, if you like want to record something, you can go back to it later and then, type it in there, especially if it's voice to voice to text, right? You could go in and you can save it that way. But I'm just a big fan of that because I will, like you're saying, I will get random ideas and I want to keep them, and it allows me to keep them somewhere so it's not like 50 different Word documents or whatever that I can't keep track of. They're all in one place and they're all kind of just grouped together. So I will throw that out there for you, Nis. I don't it's basically my favorite piece for
Let's
writing.
jump on that idea and extend it a little bit into one of our note points in terms of brainstorming techniques, right? So the thing that we had talked about is mind mapping. I find to be very helpful, and I know Heidi does as well because she sent me a handwritten mind map that was very clearly um, and orderly in terms of all her ideas on what she was writing.
If you could post it up here,
I don't
if
know
you
if
want.
you can post it up. You probably
I
got
mean,
it.
if I can find it, I think
Yeah.
it's in. I'll go find it. I think it's on the Discord.
Yeah, that's fine. For me, I will do that as well on paper. But this was my point about the physical thing. And again, going back to even, doing something physically, then digitizing it. I find that first draft in physical to be really, really great, very helpful, and a very rapid way of just getting everything out of your head quickly without having to deal with interfaces and all the rest. Once you have that, again, I use a piece of software called Obsidian. It's free. It'll run on Mac and I think some other stuff as well. There's a lot of developmental community around there. So there are just a slew of plugins and all sorts of stuff. It will do markup for editorial stuff and outlines, so you can stylize the way you want. But then you can pull it into the canvas area and you can do links and images. All of your outlines with markup will pull that style into the canvas area. You can color code. You can like create node points and draw connections. You can group them and color code that whole group. Really great. I know I've shared a screenshot of, I think, the Chicago 1893 project here last year at some point to just illustrate how I kind of keep track of all the components of that project. But it's really, really good in the sense that if you draw a mind map, right, and then you want to make a change, well, that's very tough to do with something that you wrote without scribbling and making a mess. Digitally, once you've done that first messy version, once you put it into digital, well, then you can really modify things and move things around, tug and pull and push all of these components wherever you want, regroup them, make more space for additional entries and things like that. And that, I think, saves you in a future draft from having to say like, oh, well, I got to rewrite these 40 to 50 components, which is just very time consuming. You know, when you're trying to brainstorm and develop ideas, you want to be rapid about it and get all the ideas out as quickly as you can. Again, you could take that digital image, that mind map, and print it out and then write on that. So, this back and forth process between physical and digital that I kind of keep harping on, I think like the speed of our brain wants us to use our hands to get the ideas out, unless you want to do kind of like speech recording. I do that as well, like dictaphone style stuff where I'll talk over a video and then basically get all my ideas out onto that. I know Heidi has seen a video or a few videos probably where I've done that, and then I'll kind of come back and clean that up, and it just helps me to get that first phase of ideas out, so that basically, I can move at the pace of my mind, and then I'm able to, revise and add, chop out, and things like that while you're working on those projects. Nis, you unmiked for a second. Did you have an idea?
Well, I was looking at my my little journal book where I started all this, and I actually I was smart enough. I wrote kind of an introductory. I have a chapter 1 and chapter 2 where I actually kind of wrote kind of an introduction to kind of the story, and then and then I have just the pages where I have the pictures and stuff like that. But I mean, I obviously put some initial thought into at least start like the beginning of why this is, the book. But I'm speaking in terms of third person, of or first person of the dog. Okay, so but I was like, man, this is pretty cool. It's pretty clever what I did, and I started it in 2018. I actually put the date that I started it. So it's interesting. It's been a while since I've gone back and touched it, but I know this is one of the things that I wanted to do, for my grandkids.
Yeah, very cool. And the best part about it is next month we're going to get an update and see how far you got. And then you can tell us about the roadblocks and things that you might hit then, or the tremendous amount of progress that you've made between now and the middle of February. We usually do these workshops in the middle of the month. That way, you get a little bit of time, not only in terms of the month, but you get a little bit of time, say it's not necessarily the first week of the month, and you're able to basically, sneak some work in, because the beginnings and ends of the months, there's things that are going on, and sometimes you don't necessarily get everything accomplished that you were hoping to. That's at least my thinking. I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that thought process, and you've definitely motivated me to pick up again where I was, because I do enjoy the writing and the telling of the story. So I don't know. Hopefully, it'll be fun enough for the grandkids to at least go, hey, this was written by Grammy. So, and they'll relate to all the pictures in the box and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, Ness. I mean, yeah, especially, you're looking at it as a children's book, and it's the thing that's interesting is when you start writing, you're talking about you've got this sci-fi thing you want to connect and all that stuff. What's always fascinating to me is how the ideas start to connect, and you and they start coming in. It's really a self-feeding sort of thing. It's like if you do it, the more you do it, the more you will the more the ideas will come, is the best way I can put it. So, if you're focused on that, and it'll be strange. There'll be this moment where that connection will happen with that greater idea you have about this dialogue between these animals. It's really fascinating, that process, if you just keep pushing it. I can't, it's a lot of fun. It's well worth your time.
Well, thanks for letting me just bring up my idea, because it's one of these things where I love coming to your spaces and listening and stuff. And so today was like, okay, I gotta throw this out and see how it works. So, but thanks so much.
No, absolutely. That's the whole point of this. You gotta just it all comes out of ideas, right? So you just got to start from there. I put up in the Nest a mind map. It's actually for the second book, and a lot of it changed. This is the irony of it, right? So I'm looking at this, and it's sort of the opening of the second book and some ideas going forward, but some of it didn't happen in the book. So that's the other thing to consider, is it's like, just because you wrote it down doesn't mean you have to stick to it if it just doesn't play out. Some of this stuff may happen later on, but you know, it it's just an idea. You see, I just sort of box things. It's just like a flow chart is really all it is.
Now, if it's okay with you, could I at least take a picture of this first introductory page, and you guys let me know what you think?
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure. Yeah. Drop it into the comments. So there's a few other notes. There's some kind of interesting stuff that we hit on while we were researching the topic for today's workshop, right? We typically spend a little bit of time the week prior looking for resources and planning out an overview of the topic. There's a guy named Alex Osborne, an advertising executive, creator of the term brainstorming. And I'm going to just post up his, oops, getting me too fast there, Ness. I'm going to post up a link to his Wikipedia because I think it'll kind of guide you into some interesting locations on there. I like to surf Wikipedia in general. I'm on it basically every day, multiple times a day, usually. I don't consider it to be a great firsthand source, but I do find it to be very good for sourcing at least the first stage of information, and then leading me into places where the high quality first source information is. So he coined the term brainstorming, also was involved with the idea of what is called Scamper. So this is kind of a brainstorming technique. Scamper is an acronym for substitute, combine, adjust, modify, put to other uses, eliminate, reverse. So a structured way of assisting you to think out of the box and enhance your knowledge, right? I'm not telling you you need to do any of these particular things. Just putting them on your map. You know, maybe there's little bits and pieces of all this stuff that you end up synthesizing into your process. That some of this stuff ends up becoming the way that you work more efficiently or more rapidly or better. You know, any of those things are possible along the way. We've got your page up there. Let's have a look at it. Just the one page, right? Yeah. Heidi, have you read it already?
Now, I
I'm-
apologize for my chicken scratch.
Well, you see my chicken scratch too, so don't worry about it. I'm left-handed, so I have super accelerated chicken scratch.
And smudging. Has everybody seen that? Let me, I don't know if we put it up into the nest actually yet. So let me grab that. I'll put it up there if it's not already. And that way everybody can have a look at it. Do you want to read those couple of paragraphs for us?
I
Maybe
can
as a
if you guys
jump-off
can
point?
tolerate my voice.
Well,
so.
you know, we've been tolerating it here.
You have a great
managed.
voice, and I
Okay.
reading and I like it. So go.
Okay. Chapter 1, in the beginning. The story of all stories doesn't begin with once upon a time or there once lived a boy, girl, man, etc., or fill in the blank. The story of all stories starts with you are not alone. And in fact, the start of the story should almost begin with a simple phrase, in the beginning. Therefore, the start of this story will profoundly continue with in the beginning. In the beginning of man's start on Earth, or Terra as my kind calls it, the humans were alone and wandering. They were vulnerable, afraid, and lacked a sense of humor. My kind arrived at the time of human history when they were wild and free and really had no structure for their existence other than eating, sleeping, breeding, and trying to stay alive by not getting eaten. And I can read more if you want.
Go ahead, read more.
Okay.
Well, hold on. Let's jump into what we've got here so far.
Okay.
So this is what you're writing, and this is intended to be kind of the beginning of this children's book.
Right.
For under 10?
10 and under.
I think you might be maybe pushing it a little bit. I don't know. But again, like it kind of comes, this is a first draft.
Right.
Yeah, you know, you never know. I would say like this is perhaps a little more elevated than 10 and under. I don't know how young you're thinking. I would assume there are also
Do you
some
think
precocious 10-year-olds as well, but
I think we need to give kids a little more credit. Let's see, 10. What grade is 10 again? 10 is what?
Third
Fourth grade.
Fourth
grade maybe.
Fourth grade. Yeah.
I think it's all right.
Maybe.
But I you could definitely sort of, I mean, it sounds like the beginning of a chapter book to me, which is right in the zone there, and it's loveliness.
Yeah,
I'm
it is
intrigued.
good.
I love your beginning. It's good. So, I mean, I wouldn't even change that, to be honest with you. I mean, I am not a fourth grader, but I'm intrigued. I want to know what's
Well, good. Okay, good. That makes me very, very happy. Very happy.
Yeah, you should.
Keep going.
It's really quite sad if one were to ponder much about it. Nevertheless, this story is not totally about humans. It's more about my kind and how my kind became known as man's best friend. That's right, humans call us dogs. That would be the modern humans. The ancient humans used to call us gods. And should they refer to our kind as anything else, would have been a death sentence to them. Oh, times have changed. It not only changed humans, but changed my species as well. And that is certainly a different story. This story is mostly about the tale of the dog, the guardian, also known as the teller of this tale, as me. Leia. At least that's what the name the humans that took me gave me. My actual name doesn't work well on paper since our language isn't known to them or one of those on Terra. Ah, yes, Earth. So I'll just stick with Leia. From what my hosts have told others, my full name is Princess Leia. After some time and listening to my host talk to other humans, they named me after a fictional character in a science fiction space movie. She was a strong character with some mental abilities and then dies a death that is honorable. I suppose for me, it is a formidable name as it is a sense of royalty, legacy, and honor. I am a guardian, so I find it quite appealing. More? More?
Well,
Okay.
let's pause there for a second. So you want to do this with pictures as well. So
That's correct.
let's think about some of that. How many pictures? How long do you imagine this might turn into? What sort of pace do you see the pictorial content taking with the editorial content?
Well, I think, like for instance, just the chapter at the beginning, the first photo that I have is it's a nighttime picture of her, and she's sitting by the pool, our swimming pool, and she's just got her legs crossed, and she's just kind of chilling. And as I go on, as I'm reading this, I've got pictures of her with. We had a Brittany Spaniel at the time that actually taught her how to dig up moles. So there's a chapter in here learning how to dig up moles, and it's quite funny because I had video and images of the Brittany basically showing her, okay, smell here, and okay, dig here. And then as a Great Pyrenees, she can move a lot of dirt. So she doesn't dig holes, she digs trenches. And it's really quite intriguing, especially since I have images to show, you know, the hole compared to a Brittany and a Pyrenees. And it's just funny because, there's a picture of her sticking her whole head in this hole to try to sniff out to see where the mole is. So, I mean, those are the kind of things. So I don't know, is it too much? Is it too little? Should I shorten it and just, here's a picture of her with her head in the hole. And, the Brittany's telling her, okay, can you smell it? Can you figure out which way it's going?
Well,
so I don't know.
Let me give a little bit of just my feedback just off of
Sure.
first impressions. So I think that Heidi's right about it having the tonality of a chapter book where the photos mixed in, for that style of stuff, that might work. I don't know. But if it's going to be more heavily pictorial, then I think that you are going to want to trim down the narrative so that you can basically fit all this stuff together. It might even be that these become like a series of smaller, shorter releases, and then maybe you later on you compile them together. I'm finding that to be valuable too. Where
That's a really good idea.
I put out shorter ebooks that are fictional, and maybe in the future, I'll start to put that stuff together in collected paperbacks. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to approach that. What?
May I throw in my opinion? So, Michael and I are kind of funny because he writes really short, clean stuff, and I write really long, florid stuff. So, let me give you both opinions, and you should absolutely decide what works for you. So on the other, I won't cut things down on that level. I write long. My novels are like my first novel's 400 pages. The second one that I need to edit and get out this year is another 400 pages. I feel like I've accomplished something magical with a novella that's only going to be about 100 pages. It's like, wow, it's short. But so I'm on the other end of this. So for me, I'm like, you know, I have a kid. We went through a ton of chapter books, and me, I have a boy. So if it's very hard to get boys to want to read, especially with all of the books they push at them that are usually about little girls. So one of the things I will say with chapter books is they are filled with photos, even the longer ones, and they're like 80 pages. Let me grab something off the wall here that would fit into this zone. So
When you say photos, do you mean actual pictures or do you mean illustrations?
they
Actual
usually,
photos.
you
Mhm.
can do both. I've seen all of the above. And the other thing you can do too, Nis, is you can haul those photos into, you know, editing software and make them more picturesque as opposed to photorealistic, depending on what you want to do.
For sure.
And so, I mean, you just have a world of options. So in terms of cutting the narrative, you can absolutely do that. But this is probably not. I just all the chapter books are upstairs. I'm trying to. I've grabbed the Little Prince, which I hope y'all have read at least once, the Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. But so it's technically a chapter book. It's filled with illustrations, but you can fill these with photos. It's with photos and such. It's 91 pages. This copy I've got. Um, Obviously for these chapter books, even chapter books, you want all that artwork, photographs. You can do photos. I've seen them with photos. It depends on what you want to do. I mean, it there's no rules. It's really, you're a pirate. You should know this. There's really only guidelines, right? I mean, that's the thing, is you have to realize about stories. It's like, yeah, certain things work certain ways. So find what works for you. I know Michael and I, we don't know, it's not so much that we disagree, but I mean, and he's got a point. It's like, if you're a new, for me, it's like if you're a new writer who wants to take on reading a 400-page book, it's like, I don't even know you. You're asking so much of me. It's like, we haven't even gone out on a first date, so he's got some very good points with that. But the other thing is, with a chapter book, if you break it up visually a lot, but yeah, I mean, you want to keep it to that shorter length, for sure, for children. But obviously, it sounds to me like you've got tons of different stories. You can break them into pieces, and you can write them in little short chunks, right? They don't all have to be, and it can be like a series. It's like Clifford the Big Red Dog. There's a whole bunch of Clifford books, right? That kind of thing. So, I mean, those are a little younger than what you're talking about, but you have these options. So I would throw that out there. So, I mean, sometimes I don't necessarily think maybe cutting it all down, maybe just breaking it all up into different books is an option, um, into smaller, more manageable chunks. I
Yeah,
don't know. What do you guys?
that's probably more of what I meant, in the sense that we haven't seen all of it, right? So that's why I want to go back to just saying, like, digitize this stuff and see what you have and see how you can approach uh, the material in the most natural way for the material. It might be that this is only presentable as a book. But it might also be that you find, oh, there's kind of this episodic nature to this material, where I'm able to kind of drop in on the characters and their world in a way that Heidi was talking about with Clifford the dog. And you're able to kind of chunk out this material into a collection of releases, build audience, and then maybe even later on gather up that material again and put it out, in collected form as well. Puppy, you got your hand raised. What are you thinking?
Okay. Good morning. Nis, I love everything that you read. And my thought was chapter books too. And I had this random thought of, um, I've heard like with filmmakers, screenwriters, whatever, often you're creating this world and imagining this world and the backstory, as they call it, and it's very rich and filled with details and has rules and is consistent within those rules, etc. Is that part of it? And then how much of that ends up on the page? Because I always like show, not tell. You're going to maybe, but I feel like that is a series of books because each pet has a purpose, has a personality, has a character, but it's come from the same planet with the same rules, etc. But I feel like you established it. I really liked how you put it about trying not to get eaten. I don't know. It set a really good tone. And as far as reading ability, maybe my family's weird, but my grandson had already read all the Harry Potter series multiple times by age 10. So I think in terms of reading ability and whatever, I don't know. But that is more, I don't know, how much of that do you have to know at the front end? And I'm also feeling like where you understand that world, it's a very clear perspective. You could do poems. You could do greeting cards for your family. You already have this coherent concept and world. And then it's just like, do with it what you will. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to say is I'm staring at a black screen and it says Obsidian. Well, I've taken the leap. I wrote Obsidian down over a year ago on my little freaking notes. I want to organize my notes. They're everywhere. They're a mess. So, dun, dun, dun. I want to be able to sync it to all my devices and all that. And when you say plug in, I have a little stroke because I don't even know what the hell that is. I'm 70, but I want to learn. Is that a link? Is that interacting with another program that'll allow you to put a video clip or an image in there versus words? Anyway, I'm excited because I have taken the leap. I'm going to try Obsidian. Heidi, no offense with your Scrivener thing. Also, one more point, Michael. I want a freaking murder board. All those cop shows where they have it looks like I like the wooden framed ones on wheels. I want murder boards in my home, only what they're going to be is vision boards and progress reports. I want it. I want them. Okay. Sorry.
Big advocate
so
for
I'm staring at the blank Obsidian.
Okay, so this is a hack as well. You can get those large, I cannot remember the technical name for these, but they're basically like the large, like I think 8 or 10 foot long boards that you can get at like Home Depot that would be used for, say, maybe a bathroom or something like that. And you can put those up in a space that would be functionally like a whiteboard. So you'll be able to erase off of them. Very cheap and huge space coverage to do physical brain dumping, mind mapping type of stuff. Now, in terms of Obsidian, the term plugins is in regards to the developer community who create these additional tool sets that can be incorporated into Obsidian. Don't go too far down that road just yet. Just learn how to use the basic program as it is, right? Learn how to maybe use markup inside of the text side of things, and then learn how to use the canvas and all the tools that are in the canvas side of things. A guy I know, what is it, Plus One Creator on YouTube. I follow him. I've shared his account in the past. And he's got a slew of videos on how to use Obsidian and as a like power user. I am nowhere near a power user in terms of all the tool sets and plugins. There are a ton of them. again, I'm using just vanilla Obsidian and getting just a great amount of value out of it all the time.
Thank you, Michael. Have I told you lately that I love you?
Well, hey,
Hi to you
thanks.
too. And you're so generous. And also the final point I forgot I was going to make was, and I'm a retired attorney. Was it 4 decades or so of that? A lot of writing and editing in that context. And now I'm wanting to write other things. And I've begun to do that. But I attended this one seminar when I was a baby lawyer, and it helped me so much. And it was called the 5-minute brief. And because I'm the kind of person, I can't start with an outline. My scientist daughter, my plant physiologist, she can. I have to start with the brainstorm. So his technique for this was, when you're done with the research in the context of writing a legal brief or whatever, and you're, Michael, you're staring at that blank page, you don't know, is set your timer for 5 minutes. And I would use this technique with my kids. And then you just write, no editing, none. Even if part of what you write is your grocery list, it doesn't matter. You just go for 5 minutes. The idea is everything you've studied, prepared, boom, let it come out. Then ding, the timer goes off. The next 5 minutes is your outline phase. That you're circling what are the main ideas, and then you kind of group them, the outline, and then ding, and then the last 5, you literally write it. And it's miraculous for getting over that writer's block thing. But I found that technique just helps me. And now with talk to text apps or dictating, whatever, I can even just do it verbally. It gets me over that initial hump somehow. So I wanted to throw that out to see if, and I feel like I could do that in the context of an Obsidian app. So I'm excited about that, because I have so many fragments now of notes, partially written essays, and it's like, they're all in my notes thing now, and it's like,
Oops, sorry about that.
yeah, that's okay. It becomes like a filing nightmare. Like, what is this? How do I organize this? So anyway, I'm going to start with Obsidian, because I think I have a lot of ideas and actually a lot of writing that I've already done, certainly quite a lot of research. So I'm looking forward to finding a way to put all that in one place, but also then use it organically to help me, navigate those blocks and stuff.
Very cool. You'll have to report back to us next month during the February workshop to tell us how you've been doing with it. Terry,
I must, because I've been getting ready to get ready since I met y'all, and it's been a year.
Yeah,
so it's time.
It is time. Yeah. Terry, Carrie, you guys are both on stage. I want to give you guys an opportunity to maybe tell us about how you start your writing. You're both on very different wavelengths in that sense. Whoever wants to go first, let's throw it out there. Don't anybody unmic at once or anything.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, Michael. Hi, Heidi. It's thank you so much for inviting me up. How do I start? I usually start with inspiration. Like, I'll see something and then I'll write it down as sort of an aspect for a story, like an element for a story, or like I'm usually in the worst, like most boring situations, and I get my best inspiration from that. Or I need to tell a story about something, like the second to the last thing that I threw up on Brad TV is called Whiteout, and I wanted to describe what the meaning of dystopian means to me from a creative perspective. So I either get stuck on something that I find, like, in a sense that's super boring, in that I want to add something really wild to it, or have to explain something that's in my creative imaginative mind. Or I'll use storytelling to tell, like, sort of an expansive, hyper realistic story that's relative to certain generations or demographics, so that they could relate to sort of the creativity that I'm trying to put out there. So that's how I get started with writing. There are some things that I do fairly quickly. It's like, oh, I've got this idea about dystopianism and I can't get it out of my head. So somewhere along the lines, I start expressing it and I put everything else on the back burner and focus on that. And then there are the long forms of writing like Laundrygate. I'm on volume 2. I've been on volume 2 writing it since the last piece was published. The last book was published, I think, in 2020. And it's almost finished. I keep saying it's like 85% there, but there's always something that I'm like, oh, this needs to tie up here, you know? So I don't know. It's very personal. Is that what you were looking for?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, your experience is your experience. Everybody does it a little differently, right? It's not on us to discredit or adopt anybody else's methods. It's just really, you know, what we do here is talk about it. And if there are things that people like, maybe they give them a try, you know, in the grand scheme of things. I think that's what we're all kind of doing. But, you know, at least in terms of the functionality of these conversations, maybe the thing is that the real value is that we verbalize our process, and that allows us to see it from take a step back from it and see it and objectify our own processes, even if other people get no value out of them. You know, I don't know that anything that I do is the right way or good for the other folks that hang out with us. But for me, when I talk about them, again, similar to dictating, like the old style dictaphone, just getting the ideas out there, all of a sudden, you know, I'm able to evolve my own thinking on my processes or the creative work that I'm doing. So, you know, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, Terry.
You know, for long form stuff, I do love the whole world building. I am very, very visual rather than like writing is kind of my second thing. But visually, if I could see the story, then I could write about the story. So like visual world building is how I developed like Laundrygate. And I'll pull from all sorts of things. You know, I have articles on my world building board. I have, you know, bits of things that people have said in different spaces that we belong to. And I keep building this out from inspiration into character development into the visual of like what these fantastical worlds look like. Oh, I see my friend Dean Landsman down there in the audience. Hi, Dean.
Yeah, very good. Carrie, how about you? How do you get started?
Well, nothing I ever say should ever be taken as advice, even if I say, here's some advice, because
Noted.
Things like starting a creative project. It very much depends on the nature of it, of course. But whenever it's been creative writing, specifically the composition of fiction, I've inherited my grandfather's genes on this. He, whenever he wrote a book, and I don't know how many he published in the end, he was a philosopher, so there are books on philosophy. He would write it all out by hand, read it, and go, there we go, tear it up and start again from the beginning. I pretty much do the same thing when it's writing creatively, which is why I seldom do it, to be honest. I've written a novel. It's very much for me. It took me, I think it took me 3 months to do the first draft. It's about 160 1,000 words, I believe. I can't remember now. And I'm looking to go back to it at some point, but I need to get an editor on board and sort through the mess. But when it comes to the other writings that I do, if I'm writing about philosophy and storytelling, or if I'm writing notes or anything like that, the way to get started is a really cheatish way for me, because I'm dealing with a pre-existing canon, a pre-existing corpus of tales. So they're there. It's just reflection for me. But any kind of creative idea that I've had, whether it's when I was a comedy writer, if I was writing a pilot or writing that novel, the idea is already fully formed in my head pretty much. And what's not there, it's an act of discovery along the way. It kind of just flows and comes out. And if I don't like it, I go back and I dispense of it. And that's whole chapters, you know. So I don't tend to get started until the big idea, the broad brushstroke has already reached the end of the canvas. If it's like, you know, I'd really like to do something about this, and it's a small idea, and see what it grows into, I don't tend to let those germinate. It's the big idea first for me, usually. And again, do not take this as advice at all. And there's various people who've said various things about this. I always come up with the title first. For whatever reason, I can't start unless it's got a name. The title may change, but I actually can't start a piece of literature, of literary work or script work. I can't start unless it's got a working title. I do labor over it a lot more than I do the first chapter or the first 5 scenes, the first act. I labor over that a lot more. So yeah, that's how I get started. That's not helpful to anyone, but it is the answer, unfortunately, for you all.
Well, it kind of creates a little bit of a silo, I think, for what you're working on. So we asked the other folks that were up here before, but, you know, Puppy, Terry, Carrie, you did not get to necessarily report in on what you are making progress on, what you intend to make more progress on, not only since the beginning of the new year, but between today and the next workshop that we'll be doing in February, where we will grill you in the hot seat about what you've gotten done. So maybe, tell us a little bit about what it is you're working on, maybe why you want Obsidian, or what video that you might be creating with generative AI, or what book you are presently chopping it up with. Carrie, anybody can unmic, it's fine.
Well, it's lucky for me. It's taken out of my hands with the next sort of big project that I'm working on from a writing perspective, is that I'm actually writing the libretto for an operetta. So I'm a librettist now, apparently. Again, it's a weird piece because we are incorporating storytelling in the oral tradition and opera. So I've got to write a framework for future tellers in the role of narrator. The role is technically is just going to be storyteller, but you would characterize it as narrator for those who aren't part of the storytelling audience. But I'm not writing a script for the teller, so I have to write the framework of the tale for that to be followed, for it to make sense with an orchestra, with singers. And I'm also obviously going to be writing the lyrics to the songs as well. So it's an interesting melange. It's a really interesting mix of the free form with just, it's not going to be bullet points, but it'll be a framework for the tale and where the teller goes. Then with a beat for songs, for the singers to take over in their roles as characters within the tale. Very little stage direction, except when it's necessary. And so I'm writing a children's operetta. So that's what I'm going to be grilled on next month.
May I jump in for a second? Because I want to say something in terms of inspiration / how do I start? And this involves you, Carrie. my horse-loving friend. I was listening to your space you did on masculinity in story belief. I don't think I have the title quite right. So you guys did it. It started at what was like 3 or 4 in the morning for me. So I listened to the recording, and obviously, because as much as I love you, I'm not going to get up at 3 in the morning if I don't have to. So that said, now here's the thing I want to make about when inspiration strikes, stop and deal and get it down. This is my point. So I was listening to that, and the novella I'm working on right now, well, it's written, it's done, but I'm sort of beta. I'm in first drafts of it. So when I was listening to it and you were talking about masculinity, this novella I'm writing basically it's sort of a knight's tale, we'll say, I do cowboys, so it's sort of a Western fantasy knight's tale. And everything you were saying was ringing true for my novella. And when you got to the part about the Pas Denogon, forgive my pronunciation, which is a song that this Welsh woman would sing to her child to tell of the glory of what it was to be a man, about his father and what he did, which was to provide, I had to stop. It was about an hour and a half in, because I realized I needed that piece in this story. So this is why I say stop with the inspiration. So I stopped listening. I listened to the rest of it later and basically realized I needed this piece for my story. So I wrote what basically was inspired by the Pas Denogon, a song in it that fed the narrative, that opened that up to, because this story is very much about this fellow becoming a man, and what that actually means. So thank you for that. I want to say, this is my point. When that stuff hits you, stop and focus on it. I mean, we can't always do that, but if you can, absolutely stop and get it down, because that, more than, even if it's just a fragment of an idea, stop and do it, because it's well worth your time. And I don't know if you're like me, but I'm sure there's much I've lost that just went away because I didn't stop and get it down. So I will say that is one of the places to start. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're most welcome, Heidi, and thanks for not staying up and only listening to half. So thank you very much for that.
I listened to the rest of it after I got my little piece written. Because I was curious, what else has he got in here for me that I'm going to use, right? So I stole from you. I stole from the Welsh. I'm not giving you reparations. Just deal with it.
Okay. That's fair enough. We never get anything. It's fine. With Pais Dynogad, the fascinating thing about Pais Dynogad is where it's chronicled, because it was probably not part of the epic that it's housed within. So it's just this lullaby, and you find it within this huge epic poem by the Bard Aneirin, and it's almost random that it's in there, almost like the scribe had to put it in somewhere to actually have it in the record. So, but it chimes with the rest of the poem. So it's a strange moment of happenstance in history that we retained, probably the oldest lullaby in Europe, by some monk going, I've got to put this somewhere, I'll put it in the middle of this poem. But actually it explains perfectly both the heroism surrounding and the camaraderie surrounding war, and that model of masculinity, but also the tragedy, because by inference, we suspect that the mother is widowed, and she's teaching the son about what her father used to do, not what her father does. So it's a stunning piece, and I'm glad it brought you inspiration, Heidi.
Well, you would not believe how well it fit into this story I've got, like beyond. It's bizarre almost. So I will leave it at that. But Sola, welcome.
Hold on just a second before we move to Sola. Because I had called out Terry in advance, and we did not necessarily give her a chance to report on what she's working on and what she's going to make progress on by middle of next month. Do you want to talk about that, Terry, or otherwise we'll kick it over to Sola?
Yeah, I'd love to. Actually, I'd like to have my feet held to the fire. This would be great because I feel like I'm dragging my feet on Laundrygate. So I am working on like 5 different projects, and Laundrygate Volume 2 really deserves to be finished. So I'm trying to, because like again, like I mentioned before, I'm more visually oriented, where Laundrygate will take my time to go through and actually write it and bring it to life. So that's the main project that I really would love to get published by at least the second quarter of this year, which would be great. But I'm also working on Tales from Space, which is 10 episodes. One is already launched. I'm working on episode 2, but I'm in the what is it, Luma Labs creator program. So I'm not sure when I could release that given the new tools that we have. So I'm hoping soon.
Wait, are you saying you're making it with the new tools?
Yeah, the new tools are really awesome.
Well, here's the thing too.
Yeah.
They need to move rapidly on getting that stuff out the door, the sitting on it, but also making the announcement for it. And I know I'm being a little hard on them, but the thing is, like, if you are letting people work on projects with it, but then basically you don't give them a date as to when that's going to go public, that's not a great method, because if you want us to be making things with this stuff, and it's our task to do that and to then put that out into the world, then we I think as creatives deserve to know when we're going to be able to do that, so we're not just potentially sitting on something that never sees the light of day.
Right. You're absolutely right, Michael. Like, there's an embargo on the tool. And so I may go back to the first version and use that. There's also like, I have some ideas around like this quirky idea of cognition and making it like an art film, like I did similarly to Whiteout, that I already storyboarded out in my notebook. And other things like I need to finish up, like I have character creation for a music video that I did about Sir Miles, who's this quirky space cat. So I want to turn that into a little mini series too. And then my big project, which will probably take me into next year, will be converting Strange Place, which is my book that was published last year, and taking those 5 episodes and making them into like a little bit, not like a long movie, but maybe it's about 40 minutes long for each chapter. There are 5, like I said, 5 episodes, 5 chapters. And I think that will be really good discipline for me to like make sure those characters like follow through and all the way to the end in terms of like the voice and the look and feel and things like that. So I'm excited about working on that project too. So, but Laundrygate, I will have you all hold my feet to the fire on that one.
Well, then we'll be checking back in with you mid-month next month. You have 1 month to make some progress and let us know what you have accomplished. Puppy, for you, we already know you're doing Obsidian. So by middle of next month, we want to see a screenshot of what you have done with Obsidian for your work. Sola, you've been patient. You got your hand raised. You're hanging out. You have something to say, and we want to hear it.
Yeah, hey guys. I was just curious to pick any of your minds here, and I could use some advice on writing, but would you guys have any advice for writing monsters? Because currently that's something I'm stuck on, where it feels like anything I come up with feels a bit like it's following a cliche, and I'm trying not to do that. So, for example, one of the main stories I'm doing at the moment is a very simple, monster hunting protagonist type story where the monster, of course, is like following the elements of being more of like a force of nature, if anything. But I'm trying my best, like, not to like make it like other past mediums. So, for example, a big block, I was like, wait, I can't have this like the Predator from like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I got rid of the whole like jungle aesthetic or theme and put it more like a city. But I was just curious your guys' thoughts on that.
There's a concept. Ricky's not here. He left, but he talks about the 3-point composite for character development, where he'll take 3 different characters and grab things from those and then kind of generate something new, out of that. Now, I'm not telling you to do that. Also, how are you going to come in here and ask us for our original ideas for your story? I'm just teasing you. It's fine. This is what we do here. There are 3 hands raised, and I know what order they were raised in. Carrie, I saw you first.
Sola, my man, this is a question that a lot of people who are writing horror and sci-fi that I do creative consulting with don't ask. They're the ones who think that they've got the perfect monster. It's the other bits of the story. So I love this question. I absolutely love it. There's an amazing portion of Welsh mythology that I think is an excellent writing aid for building around the idea of a monster. And it's in the first branch of the Mabinogi. And if you look up the section of that story with Teirnon, the king of Gwent, or Gwent Yscoed, he battles against a monster.
Carrie, for all of us, can you type that all into the comment section so we know how whatever it is that you just said is spelled?
Certainly. Of course I can. I forget sometimes how far away I am and how none of you speak Welsh.
Yeah,
I go into it. Yeah, of course. I'll do that.
We don't yet, but this is our chance to learn. Yeah, go ahead. Please continue.
But the monster that the King of Gwent comes up against is described by the absence of description. And the level of tension is all to do with the actions that it does, the fear surrounding it, the King of Gwent himself's reaction, and the story up until that point. So the monster is never revealed or truly described. Now, if you can get that level of feeling of fear of the monster and describe that to yourself and commit that to the page, then you might see a monster emerge. I've done this myself, and it's become a far better piece of writing in describing the monster by starting of the absence of that moment of anticipating. You know there's a monster, but you haven't seen it yet, and you may not see it. But once you start writing from a first-person perspective about your experience in encountering and anticipating the monster, it will reveal itself eventually. So that's a way that I've had great success in writing monsters. And thank goodness somebody's finally asked that blooming question, because I've been waiting to see if someone else can explore this model. So I hope that works for you, my man.
No, definitely. And I've always been like a fan of horror, and something that gets annoying, especially amongst some of my friends who also write, is I try not to excuse my language, bust their balls too much on some writing topics, but it is kind of funny where I'm like, wait, this monster seems familiar. And then I ask my friend, did you mean to do it like, Nosferatu? And then I'll see him be quiet and he'll just go, damn it. And he'll go right back to the writing board because he didn't mean to like accidentally plagiarize or like take elements of that. So I'm sure you guys all know, but it's always a thin line between borrowing or inspiring from others' works compared to plagiarizing. You don't want to accidentally plagiarize.
And the funny thing in your example of Nosferatu is it's heavy on the quotes here, reimagining of Dracula. Right. Mm-hmm. Terry, I saw your hand go up second. Let's hear what you think.
I was wondering, Sola, if you looked into the metaphor of what does your monster mean? Like, is there some kind of metaphor that you're trying to get across? Because when I do horror, I like to use metaphor instead of just like, the typical like slasher kind of thing that could happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what is it? What kind of horror metaphor are you using for your monster?
So I'm going for more of the judge type of monster where it's like I said, this force of nature is not fully understood, but its main pursuit of the protagonist is in the sense of like judgment on him, not necessarily for the monster has a personal vendetta or beef, but he's just a force of nature that's like bringing almost like a righteous retribution upon him. Because protagonist at the end of the story basically struggles a lot of his own personal concepts of like his own sins of his life or like the things that he's done. And this is almost a way it's manifest of like, this is your punishment for what you lived and what you did. So I know it gets more into the realm of like religious elements or themes, but it's also I'm trying to go more into the psychological one of like the self doubt and like self regret that person has in their life.
So my other question is: is the protagonist conjuring the monster?
I would say no, and that the monster is more tied to the setting of the story, like where they're located at. So it's in a way, how do I put this? The protagonist is going to a certain location, and I don't know how I'm going to tie this in or explain it yet, but he's going to a location because he has a need or a calling to do so, but he just doesn't understand it yet. And at that location is where this monster basically is, like hunting him, and he's trying to find a way to solve and get out the place in enough time before it gets him.
Okay. So a couple of things. First, I put a picture of the Mabinogion, or the Mabinogi, as Carrie's calling it. It's down in the pill. If you want to see the book he's talking about, a collection of, I guess, legends, right, Carrie? It's sort of like the Arthurian legends, but Welsh. Am I right on saying these things?
Yeah,
Anyway.
Arthur does feature in the Mabinogion, but the four branches of the Mabinogi, which are the four main stories, the others are called the native tales. The four branches is the Welsh or the Brythonic mythological cycle, or at least a fragment of it. When you say Arthur but Welsh, Arthur is Welsh. Everyone else stole it.
Right. Well, one does what one can. Sorry. We think of him as Arthur of the Britons, don't we? But okay, so back to Sola's question. And I would agree with you, Carrie. It's like if you want to see some good villains, go back. I mean, from what you're talking about this monster, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, it's always my favorite to kick out there and say, hey, take a look at this guy.
No, definitely. I'm not going to lie. That's something I did get inspiration from is the Green Knight. And I'm trying to see how can I do this about stealing.
Well, it's not stealing. I mean, there's a difference between stealing and alluding to and being inspired by and expanding on, right? So that's the thing, is it's like, nobody's really writing anything absolutely fresh and new. I mean, it's there's nothing new under the sun, but it's what you do with the information we have and how you build upon the pantheon of story, right? But this is one of the things I would say, in terms of villains. And I mean, I'm going to try and say this so understand it from this I'm not saying that villains are good guys that have had bad stuff happen to them. I'm saying they're bad guys. So let me preface it with that. But I think the best villains are always the ones who think they're the good guy, who think they're justified, who think they have a right to be doing what they're doing. That doesn't make them the good guy. It's definitely it's sort of a victim attitude, like these horrible things happen to me, so I shall inflict them upon others, is the villain. The hero is, these horrible things happen to me, I shall protect others from experiencing them. This is sort of a very black and white line in the sand between the two. But in terms of your villains, you've said you've already called him a justice of some kind. So he thinks he's doing the right thing, and he does it with the vigor of someone who is righteous. So I always sort of approach them from that perspective. And, I think the dark and shadowy villain who you don't see, you don't get a description of, is always more sort of scary, more terrifying, has more of an impression when someone's just kind of doesn't appear to have dimension. Other than that, it can work from that thing. But I always think the way into a villain for me is to find out why they think they're the hero. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's kind of my perspective on it. So I see Michael, Michael, are you there?
Oh, yeah.
Getting some
No, I'm here. Just letting you guys talk. I don't have to interject at all times. I'm just a facilitator, an operator, as it were. We typically go for 2 hours, and we are coming close to the tolling bell. Plane, you're up on stage. We want to hear what you're working on. We want a check-in. We want to know when we can expect a book, or maybe just tell us a little bit about your process of getting started.
Thanks, guys. Apologize for the road noise. I'm in the car. Carrie, Terry, and Heidi all covered pretty much what I was going to say to Solo's question, which, the unseen villain is often your strongest villain. Even the Predator is not seen for quite a while in that movie. But I was also going to just say really quickly, don't be afraid of stealing, or don't be afraid of the cliche as a placeholder, as something that you just sort of have there as a building block and you're kind of working at it. The more you develop your idea, the more it will become unique to your story. So that would be my only real encouragement there. I have a book I'm working on. It has wolves in it that are bad guys, and at first I think they looked very much like your typical werewolf or something like that in like the Harry Potter movies. But as the story developed, I realized I don't need them to look that way. What's more important is just the presence of danger that they bring, and that sort of thing. So I think you just keep going, and you'll find what's working for your story. And I wouldn't worry too much that everything at some point, if you break it down enough, you go, yeah, that's just kind of like this one, or that came from here. So it's really more about how you work it out over the course of telling your story. As for me, my process, it usually starts with either an image or a line. I can't always distinguish between the two. Sometimes I'll just be kind of mulling over something, and somebody posted a poem online, and I was reading it, and it was talking about the line that came to me after I read it was dreams untroubled by dragons. And I don't know where I would even go with that, but that line goes down in a notebook, and maybe I'll come back to it and see where it goes from there. It may be something that feeds a character, it may be something that feeds a scene. The book I'm currently working on, I started on it about 4.5 years ago. I had a page of notes of just different ideas, that different characters, different settings, and it was about 2020, and I looked at it and I was like, well, I'd have to live to be 150 to write all of these, and that's not going to happen. So maybe there's a story that connects 5 or 6 of them, and that was where the current book came from. But a lot of it, even my chapters often start with an image of a location or a line that a character has said, and I have to kind of work my way around, like, okay, well, why is this person saying that? Why are they here? Why does it look the way it does? And where do we go from there? I just posted a short story to my timeline yesterday, inspired by a prompt on the color orange. And when I started that, I had one image in mind of a stagecoach hurtling towards the sunset. I didn't know where I was going with that story. I just had that one image, and then I wrote myself all the way to the end. Yeah, that would be my process, which is very. I'm much more of a pantser at the outset, and then more of a plotter in the revision and in the edit. I can't go the other way. It's more of just kind of get the images and ideas down, see how they're relating to each other. Is there chemistry between characters? Is there chemistry between scenes and beats and things like that? And kind of just find it's definitely more discovery for me than it is architecting. So yeah, my book. I'm almost done. I'm finishing the last pass with my editor right now. There's been a few setbacks on my end, a few setbacks on his end, but I'm really hopeful that I can publish in March. I have my cover. So let's see, next month, if I'm here, I would hope that I would be through the final pass and have turned everything back over to my editor, and we would start moving towards layout. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Yeah, fantastic. Just a wealth of stuff there. We are coming in on the last couple of minutes. I know Terry just messaged me. She's got to go. And don't we all, in the grand scheme of things. But a little bit of time before we finally shut this down. If there are any final thoughts from anybody, nagging complaints, praise, just anything that you wanted to get off your chest that you have not yet so far, this is your chance.
Best of luck to all of you. There's a boiling kettle behind me. I'm not hissing while saying it. That's not me making that sound. Best of luck to all of you. It's always good to hear people at what stage they're at and the journey towards the fruition of a project. And it's always great to hear from this community. Don't be like Heidi Hill. Actually go and listen to the whole of my space if you can do that. My role in relation to you guys is to provide and give a platform to the canon. I'm the vessel through which the tales flow that inspire excellent writing from people like you guys. So give it a listen and hopefully you can get something unlike Heidi, who just stole.
Fatality.
Thanks, Carrie. I really appreciate it. And don't be like Carrie and listen to what someone says when they tell you that they went back and listened to the rest of the space. Just FYI. Don't be like Carrie.
Shots fired back and
Carrie,
forth.
Matt Ladd, you blew that. She heard your whole space, man. She loves the Welsh. I love the Welsh. Thank you for being here, Carrie. This whole space I'm so grateful for it. I really feel like I got a lot out of it practically, and I just feel very lifted up, and hearing from each of the creators, getting to hear some specific work, it sparked my imagination. So thank you.
Yeah, really great conversation today. Happy to get everybody reporting in. We're going to wrap up for today as it is.
George,
Heidi, last ideas, thoughts, comments?
George, I see you, but we're literally shutting down the space. You okay, my friend? Don't hate me. I'll kill someone just for you. So,
whoa, is that a friendship or does it go further?
George, he's the protagonist killer. So
got it.
Protagonist. I'll kill someone in the story just for him, because we're shutting down. That said, we're going to try and I think proceed through the years, sort of developing the process like from beginning to end. So next week we'll be doing something in regards to that. Isn't that right, Michael? She'll leave
Yeah.
it at that.
Yeah, well, we've got the rest of this month planned out. So, for next week, you can be looking for us to talk a little bit about the dichotomy between nonfiction and fiction. I think that is broadly applicable to most of the folks here. Everybody's working in a bunch of different stuff. As for today, enjoy the rest of your day. Grand Sumo January tournament started on Sunday. We are on day 3. You can catch all of the daily action on NHK World, on Roku, or the web, or wherever your streaming devices are connected. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk next week.